In this video, I'm going to implement the Froala editor into a Flask app that will allow me to easily create custom pages using the Wysiwyg editor that Froala is. So this video, I will demonstrate how to implement it, and you'll see that it's very easy to get up and running. And I'll also demonstrate some of the more advanced features of the Froala editor. So first, let me show you what I have right now. I have this app, and this is the home page, so we don't see anything yet. And the first thing I want to do is I want to go to this create link, and I can create a page. So I'll just call this example page, and I'll put page content here and just submit. So the idea is I have this page where I can type into a text area, and then I generate a page based off what I typed. So I'm going to replace that text area with Froala, and we'll see how easy it is to do that. So this is what it looks like. And then when I go home, I see a link. So let's go over to the code. And in the code, just to show you what I have a database that's going to hold all the pages that I create. I have the index page, which will query all the pages and then list them as links here. So we see example page. And then I have an endpoint to create the actual page. So here in the post method, it handles taking the title and the content and adding it to the database. I also slugify the titles so I can have a URL for each particular page, and that gets saved to the database. And then I have the endpoint for simply displaying a page. So with that said, now let's implement Froala into this Flask app. So if I go to the create page here, the template, we see I'm using a base template, which I'll show you in a moment. But the important thing here is I have this text area, and it's just a regular text area. So I want to convert this text area to the Froala editor. And since I'm here, what I can do is I can give this an ID. And then later when I go to instantiate the Froala editor object, I can pass in the selector for this ID. So I'll just call this editor. And then my base template looks like this. So I have a head here, which I'll need to add some things to in a moment. And then I have a file for the scripts where I'll add the JavaScript for the editor. So let's get the link for the CSS and the JavaScript for Froala editor. So I can go back to my browser and I'll go to froala.com. And to get the links, I can go to get started here. So I'll just click on the button. And then down here under step 1, I want to change this install from npm to ucdn. And then it's going to give me these two tags. So one link and one script. So I'll just copy those and I'll paste them in the head tag of my base template. So let me go ahead and format these. And then the last thing I need to do to get the editor to start working is I'll go to my JavaScript file, which is empty. And all I have to do is type new and then Froala editor. So capital F, capital E. And then I need to pass in the selector for the text area. So it's just hash and then editor. So I can save this. And now when I go back to my app and go to the create page, I now have the Froala editor on my page. So I no longer have a plain text area. This has been completely transformed to the Froala editor. And to show you how it works, I can call this Froala page and I'll bold some text here. So I'll say this is the page created with Froala. And then I can put something like a list. So first, I can add another thing like seconds. And then for the third, I'll underline it just like that. So I have these things here. I'll hit submit. And when it generates the page, I see HTML. So the reason why this is happening is because by default, I'm not allowed to just inject HTML. So to get this to work, I'll go back to my template. I'll go to my page template here. And I just have to put pipe safe for my page content. So the HTML gets stored in the database. And then when I go to query the page, it's going to be in the content on the page object. And then I can just declare this as safe and it will appear properly. And since I'm here, it's recommended that anything that Froala generates should be in a class called frView. So I'll just put that class on the div that surrounds the content. And then I'll go back here, refresh. And now we see the page that I just created. So this is exactly what I put in the editor. And we see it's formatted in the same way. I have third underline, I have the list here, and the rest is bold. So in addition to creating new pages using the Froala editor, so here on create, what I can do is I can also edit things that have already been created. So let me go ahead and do that. So I haven't created the edit page yet. So what I'll do is I'll create that here so you can see what it takes to create the edit page and also kind of learn a little bit about how the create page was created in the first place. So I'll go back to my code and I'll go to app.py, and here I'll add another endpoint for editing. So app routes, and then this will be called edit, and it will take in the slug for the particular page that I want to edit. And this is going to accept both GET requests and POST requests. I can create the function down here, and it's going to take in the slug, and I'll call the function edit. And the first thing I want to do is I simply want to display the page. So what I'll do is I'll query for the page that the slug represents. So I can just copy this query that I have here from the page and paste it in edit here. And then I want to return it to a template. So we'll say render template, and it's going to go to edit.html, which doesn't exist yet, but I'm going to create it as a copy of create. So I'll just copy create and paste it and just rename this to edit.html. So now if I go here and I go home first and go to Froala page, for example, click on the link and change page to edit, we see I get the page title and then the editor again, but they're empty. So what I want is I want the actual page title to appear here, and I want the text that I generated before to also appear here. So I can go over to the template in edit.html, and for the input, since I'm passing page to the template, I can set the value of title to be page.title. So just to demonstrate this, when I refresh, now we see Froala page instead of nothing. And then for the text area, I can just put the text in here directly. So in the middle of the text area, I can do page.content. I'll save that. And now when I reload the page, we see it automatically goes back to the state that it was in when I was actually created in the first place. So it's able to take the HTML and regenerate the visual for that HTML and allow me to edit it. And if I want to see the HTML, I have the option of looking at code view and I see the HTML that will be generated. But of course, if I want to use the editor as a Wysiwyg editor, I can just continue typing here and it will update the HTML in the database when I save this, when I complete the endpoint here. So let me go ahead and create the rest of the endpoint here, this edit endpoint. So I need to focus on the request method equals post part because the get is handled with this render template. So I want to get the title, the content, and the slug. So I'm already doing that here. So I'll just copy this and paste it in here. So I'm getting the title, content, and slug from the form submit. And what I want to do is instead of creating a new page, I just want to take the page that I have and edit it. So I'll say page.title equals whatever the new title is. It can be the same. Page content will be content. And then page.slug is going to be whatever the slug is. And then after this, I can just do db.session.commit and save that to the database. And the last thing I want to do is I want to redirect back to the page. So I can just take this redirect here and put it underneath the commit. So it will redirect me to the page that I just edited. So now let me go here and refresh, and we see it appears here. So instead of adding a fourth item, I'll just say, I'll put this in the center and I'll say this page has been edited. And I'll take off the underline and the bold and I'll make it italic. Hit submit. And we see it loads the page and we see this page has been edited in the middle because I centered it, and then the rest is still on the left. So as you can see, editing text with the Froala editor is very straightforward. So now I want to move on to images. So as you'll see, dealing with images is also pretty easy to do. And I'll show you how to implement that in Flask in a moment. And just know that this is very similar to how you would deal with like videos and other types of files that you want to embed. But for example purposes, I'm just going to focus on images. So let's go back over to the code. And the first thing I need to do is I need to install a couple of things. So I want to install a Python library called wand, but that depends on a Linux library called libmagicwand. So I already have this installed on my system, but to install this, you would do sudo apt-get install libmagic So C and a K and then wand and then -dev. And this will install the library on my system. If you have a different operating system, you'll have to install it in a different way. But on my system, I can install it like this. And then once it's installed, you can install the Python version through pip. So that should be the same for everyone. So pip install wand, and I already have it installed, and then that's it. Next thing I want to do is I want to bring the SDK for the Froala editor into my project. So what I'll do is I'll create a new terminal here, and I'll just go to my home directory, and then I'll go back to the Froala website. And what I'm looking for is the server SDK for Python. So after clicking on server SDKs, I want to click on Python here, and then I want to go to the GitHub link. So I'll just click on the GitHub link to open this, and I can just copy the GitHub link and close this again. Okay, so git clone and then paste in the URL, and it will clone into my home directory. So I can close this, and I'll go back to my main terminal, and I want to bring in a directory from GitHub. So basically, if I go back to the link here, I have this directory called Froala editor and the rest of the directories on my system now. I want to copy this and put it into my Python project. So to do that, I'll just copy from the home directory. It's in Wysiwyg editor Python SDK, and I want to copy the directory called Froala editor, and I'm just going to put it in my current project directory like this. So with the dots, and now we see it's in my project here. I can open it up. I see adapters, file, image, S3 video, and some other things that come along with it. So now I can just import from this, and I'll have the SDK available in my app. So now that I have this in here, my goal is to use the image functionality. So let me go ahead and go to create here. And I need to restart my app. So let me go to create here. So here, what I want to be able to do is to upload an image. So I can click on this and I can upload an image that I have here. But the thing is, this won't be saved for me. So I need to create an endpoint in Flask so I can save my images. And by using the SDK, this will be very straightforward. So first, let's deal with the JavaScript first. So I'll go back to scripts, and we see here I have Froala editor. And right now I only have the selector as an argument, but I can add a second argument, and this will be an object that holds any configuration information that I need. So here I want to set the image upload URL, and I want to set it to /upload image. So the idea here is anytime I upload an image with the editor, Froala is going to make a call to this upload image endpoint, and that endpoint is responsible for saving the image and then giving Froala the location of that image. So let's go ahead and do that now. So I can go to app.py, and I want to create this image upload endpoint. So app routes, and we'll call this upload image because that's the same as what I have in the script. So /upload image, and this will take in post requests. So methods equals posts, and then I'll just name the function upload image as well. And the idea here is I want to use something from the SDK to upload an image. So I need to import it first. So I'll go up to the top, and I'll just say from Froala editor, I want to import image and Flask adapter. So there are adapters for like Pyramid and Django, but since I'm using Flask, I need the Flask adapter. And then I'll go back down to the routes, and I'm going to call image.upload. And this takes in two things. So it takes in a Flask adapter object. So Flask adapter, and I want to pass the request. So I have requests imported already. So that's the first argument, Flask adapter, and then takes in the requests. The second argument is going to be a location to put the images. So I'll just do static images, and inside of my static directory, I can create a folder called images. So all of my images will be saved here because the SDK knows to save them in this directory that I'm specifying. And this will return the location of the image. So I can call this response, and I can return the response. So return response. Okay, just like that. So let's go ahead and try this out. I'll go back to create, and I will upload an image. So I'll just pick, let's say, a cat. It loads the image, and I'll go over to my directory here, And we see in images, I have the image of the cat. So it's been uploaded successfully by using the SDK. So I'm using it in a very straightforward way just for example purposes. But of course, you want to put some error handling code here in case something goes wrong. But for our purposes, this is enough because this is the core idea that needs to be done. And we see by returning the response from upload, it just gives Froala the link for that image that was just generated. And we see it has its own unique name. So if the same file name is uploaded multiple times, then it will have a different name. And there are many things you can do. You can like verify that the image is a certain type, like a JPEG or a PNG. You can block certain files from being uploaded. You have all those options, but to keep it simple, we're just assuming that we are getting an image here and we're placing it in the images directory. So now let me just finish this. I'll call this cat picture and I'll hit submit. And now when it loads the page, I see there's a picture of a cat. And if I go to edit this, and by the way, let me go ahead and create an edit link over here so we can easily edit. So I'll go to my base template, and to add a link, I'll just go here and do if page exists. What I want to do is I'll put an if statement and then a link. So it's going to be URL for edit, and then it's going to take in the slug. So page.slug, and then for the text, it will be edit. So if I refresh this, I have an edit link here now. I'll click edit, and we see the image is already back in the Froala editor. So even though I created it first and then I'm going back to edit it with the image, we see the image looks exactly the same as before, and I can continue editing if I wanted to. So you see how easy it is to add images. What if I wanted to browse the images that were already on my server so the users can just pick one and insert them into the post? So if I click on the insert image here, there's this browse link. And what happens is I get these default pictures that display. So what I can do here in this gallery is I can actually have pictures from my server appear instead of just these default pictures. So let's go ahead and implement that. So I'll go back to the code here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to scripts and I'm going to add another property here. And this is called image manager load URL. And I'm going to call the endpoint for this load images. So the idea here is anytime the user clicks on that button that I just pressed, the browse button, Froala will call this endpoint and it expects a list of all the images that I want to allow the user to pick from. So let's go ahead and implement this endpoint. We can go back to app.py and then create this route called load images. This will take in GET requests, so I don't have to put anything for methods. And then I'll call the function load images as well. And once again, I'll use the SDK. So this is going to have some response, and it's going to be image.list instead of image upload this time. And I need to pass in the location of my images. So it'll be static/images, and then I can return this in the response. So just like that, I should be able to browse the pictures that I have. So I'll refresh the page and then I'll go to browse. And now I see a cat is there to browse. So let me go ahead and upload another image. Let's choose the mountains and I'll do one more. How about desk? And now if I go to browse, we see I have those 3 images there. So because I uploaded them to the same directory that I'm browsing with the image manager here, I can select any of them. If I select the cat again, just by clicking the plus, I have a second image of a cat. And of course, if I save this, I'll just call this pictures now and hit save at the bottom. And now we see all the pictures that I've selected. I put a cat twice, the mountains, and then the desk. And let's go back to create. One thing you may have noticed is here in the browse, you have the trash can icon. So right now it doesn't do anything, but I can also allow the user to delete these images. So let's go ahead and implement that. As you can imagine, it's very straightforward. So I can go to my scripts here. And here I'll put this on another line because I'm adding another property. And let's just make this look a little bit better like that. And what I want to do is I want to add the image manager delete URL. and we'll call this delete image. Okay, so I added that there. Now in my app, once again, I need to create another route. So we'll call this routes and then delete underscore image. And the name of the function will be the same. And once again, I can use the SDK. So first I need to get the image location. So I'll call this src, and this will come from request form get src. So Froala is going to pass the location of the image to be deleted in the src argument. And then what I can do is I can just do image delete. So using the SDK again and just pass in the location of the image. And then I can return, let's just say, okay. It doesn't really matter what I return here because it's not expecting anything in return, but I'll just return okay. And now when I refresh, I'll go back to the image manager and let's delete the picture of a desk. It gives me this pop-up saying, am I sure? I'll click okay. And there is one small thing I need to add. I need to make this a post request, not a get. So we'll do methods posts. And now when I delete, it says deleting, it's gone. If I look here in my images, it is no longer there. So this needs to be post because it's changing something on the server, and then it returns okay after deleting the image. So with that, those are the features that I want to show you in this video: uploading an image, browsing the images with the image manager, and then deleting images with the image manager. But of course, there are many other features for the Froala editor that I didn't cover, and they're all pretty easy to implement in your Froala editor when you have it embedded in your app. So just check out the plugins that they have, and you'll be able to use any of those in a very similar way. It's a very consistent API. So if you kind of understand one thing, you understand how to do a lot of the other things with the Froala editor. So I hope this video has helped you understand how easy it is to implement Froala into a Flask app or really any app that you're building.